Globalization, Good or Bad, by Jackie C. and Poojan M. Our opinion on globalization is that it is mainly good for the world. Well, what is globalization, you ask? Globalization is the worldwide integration and development to further advance and improve the global economy. It brings countries together economically, but it also has led to many struggles with different aspects of the environment. Before we begin talking about impacts of globalization, let's talk about outsourcing, which you will hear about several times throughout this video. Outsourcing means to purchase goods and services from an outside supplier or source. An example of this would be the U.S. hiring young Indians to work at call centers in India, but they are helping people from the U.S. Another example would be when big companies like Apple outsource their production jobs to places like China because it is cheap for them and it helps them increase competition. Now let's look at some positive impacts of globalization. First, we have more efficient markets. All economies strive for this. This is where there is an equality in between what buyers are willing to pay for a good or service and what sellers are willing to sell for a good or service. Next, we have increase in foreign trade. Today, it is done in a more organized way. People who operate in olden ways have to face world organizations that have been established with a view to control and regulate trade activities of the world. Lastly, we have spread of wealth. Although many Americans contend that their standard of living has gone down because of globalization, the flip side of this is that hundreds of thousands of people around the world now have jobs, have started their own businesses, and can provide comfort for their families. Some other positive impacts of globalization are the spread of education, increase in competition, and more advanced technology to help improve the growing world. While globalization seems like the perfect solution for world problems like hunger and unequal wealth, it has also caused many negative impacts. Our first negative impact is use of more limited resources. As people and places begin to modernize, the consumption of natural resources has increased. Limited resources such as coal and oil are much needed to create new buildings or help fuel vehicles. Natural resources have a high demand. Next, we have loss of jobs in developed countries. Businesses have moved jobs from developed countries to less developed countries since it is cheaper. This has taken jobs from citizens in developed countries such as America. Lastly, we have increase in pollution. Globalization has caused a rapid increase in the amount of pollution. As countries become more industrialized, more factories are used and more pollution is released into the air or water. Some examples of this pollution is the Asian brown cloud in China or the Great Smog in England. This pollution can cause respiratory illnesses or bring bad bacteria into your body. Here we have a chart on how globalization has affected different nations. In developed nations, it has advanced the technology, but many jobs have been lost due to outsourcing to less developed countries. In developing nations, it has created more opportunities for work so people can support their families, and they have more natural resources. Globalization has positively affected both of these countries by improving the GDP and standard of living. In my opinion, globalization would lead to the solutions that will overcome and solve the negative impacts that have been caused. So now let's review. Globalization brings the world together and improves nations' economies. Outsourcing is when one country deploys jobs to another country. Finally, globalization positively affects developed and developing nations with few negative effects. So overall, we believe that globalization has a mainly more positive impact than negative impact on the world. See for yourself how globalization has changed your life.